Ahoy shipmates, welcome back to On the Wind. I'm your host Andy Schell. I'm recording this from Annapolis. I'm back in town on board my friend's Beneteau 373. I'm about to take this down to North Carolina with him next week with some friends and my dad. Very excited to do a boat trip that is coastal. We're going down the bay, then down the ICW, and when I'm not in charge, Adam, it's his boat, he's the skipper, and I am delighted to be along for the ride and have a lot of fun. I'm actually here this weekend ahead of time to install some Dakota lithium with my friend Ryan Ellison. Of course, you guys know Dakota. They are not an advertiser on this podcast, but he's a great friend, and he hooked us up with some batteries for Adam's Beneteau, and we're going to knock that out this weekend with a new alternator, new regulator, some smart control systems, and you know how I like to nerd out on this stuff. So that's why I'm here ahead of time. And this episode is actually with Nikki Henderson filling in as the host. Her and I, she just got back from the Middle Sea Race. Her and Alex did a very successful Middle Sea Race that came second place. And we do a quick recap of that before today's episode. So I'm going to hand you over to that. Listen to my recap with Nikki. And if you want to join us on the racing program, we're looking to expand that next year and beyond. It's a really, really fun and inspiring event. I'm delighted that Nikki's running it. It's really cool. All right, here we go. Hi, Nikki.
Hello, Andy.
Are you recovered yet? Have you got caught up on your sleep?
Gosh, that's a question. I actually wrote the crew an email from the race, a wrap-up email, and talked about transition from being at sea to being on land, and how I've really grown to respect that time. And actually, it's like it can be really slow to reacclimatize unless you really kind of actively try to reflect and shift your mindset. But I'm getting there. I'm pretty wired. You know, there's a lot going on when you're doing the race and when you're planning it and then when you finish it. And so I have struggled to kind of slow down a bit, but I'm getting there.
I mean, I've always... August and I are space nerds, so we like comparing everything to astronauts. It's like coming back from outer space. You have to like reacclimate your whole body and you learn how to walk again and all the rest, particularly when you're racing, because that's a whole other level, which is why you do that, because it is a whole other level. So just go back a little bit and what are we talking about here? You just got back from the Med, I guess. Yeah,
so I flew back from Malta with Alex 3 or 4 days ago. And we just spent 2.5 weeks out there, a week and a bit training a crew of 9 people, 959 North crew up to then go out and race the Middle Sea Race, which is one of the most famous kind of top 4 or 5 600-mile races in the world.
So we were following, it's so fun to like follow this as a fan. Like I'd go to bed every night and I'd check the tracker, and I'd wake up every morning and I'd check the tracker. I was following them on social media. You guys, it looked like there was some pretty gnarly weather, like typical Med weather at the start. And then you guys got stuck in a wind hole for a while, but it was like riveting. I loved being able to like follow it from a fan's perspective. But like it was so hard not being able to talk to you while it's all happening, because I wanted to know like, oh, what's happening now? What's happening now? So you don't have to tell the whole story, but what was a couple of big takeaways from this? This was your second race of our sort of 59 North offshore racing program that you developed, the Carib 600 being the first one. How's it all going? How do you feel now having 2 in the bag? And you guys got second place.
Yeah, it's so funny, everyone said, wow, you guys got second place. The crew must be so happy. And Alex and I sort of looked at each other every time someone said that and said, well, yeah, they're happy. But like, there's so much more to be gained from offshore racing than a medal. Like the medal's like the cherry on top of the very, very big cake. But honestly, the whole experience was, again, on top of the Caribbean 600, so special and so transformative. And I think, on reflection, like the year went so well. Both the races were amazing. The crew had an amazing time. Like we did do well. And it's kind of nice. Like it's kind of satisfying to look back and be like, okay, the vision worked out. Like I was right to have had the gut feeling that it was a good thing. But I think what I wasn't expecting from this was, like, we make these amazing opportunities, right, to go sailing, whether it's on Falcon or Espion on this, because we want to take people sailing and we want to share with them this amazing experience that we have. And we watch them go through these journeys and realize things about themselves they didn't know and make amazing friendships and learn tons. And I think what I didn't really realize from the racing was what a journey I would go through and a personal growth opportunity this would be. And it's been really, really fulfilling because, you know, I've been sailing such a long time that it's actually quite hard to find those opportunities to grow these days. Like, yeah, another Atlantic crossing, of course, throws like challenges, as you know, but we know a lot of them already, right? You might have little bits here and there, but it's not often these days I come off a trip and I feel like, whoa, that was a big thing. So it's been really like kind of secretly, extra special, I think, in a surprising way.
That's really interesting. I love that you said that. It's like I want to go in like therapy mode now. So Nikki, so what do you think you learned about yourself here? No, I'm serious though. Like that's really interesting that surprised you because, you know, we talk a lot about when we talk about seamanship and stuff, like not being complacent. And that's one of the things where, you know, yes, we're open-minded. You're always there. But it's really hard to avoid that complacency sometimes from just the standpoint of, well, I've done this so many times. I know how to do it. So can you put your, like, I kind of understand what you're saying philosophically, but can you put your finger on something specific that you'll take away from this personally that you weren't expecting?
I think the question has to be split into two answers. One's about sailing or one's about myself. So sailing or myself and sailing, the thing I really learned was that I did loads and loads of racing and loads of sailing up until I was about 25, 26 and really slowed down. And I thought in that time that I was doing nothing and that I thought I'm just recovering. So I really felt like I wasn't growing. But now going back on the race course 5 or 6 years later, doing what I did 10 years ago, I realized how much I gained from that period of reflection and rest. And I can now go out and do what I did before, but just with this much greater understanding of who I am and what I want to offer. And that allows me to be a calmer version of myself and a better leader and a better sailor and able to make good decisions and get the most out of the crew. And I think the race platform just kind of it's given me a mirror to realize, wow, like that was worth the time. And that's been a real challenge for me to have such a rapid growth in my life up until my mid-20s and then it feel like I just pressed pause. I mean, that's difficult for someone who's like an overachiever. So that's been one of the things.
That's really, really cool. That reminds me of an article on seamanship that I always share a lot by this guy, Andy Chase, who teaches at Maine Maritime Academy, talking about experience in a vacuum is worthless. You have to reflect and kind of debrief that experience to get value out of it. And that's effectively what you were doing, maybe without even realizing it.
That, and also in terms of the vacuum, I think the other thing that I am reminded is going to sea and going sailing is so valuable on your own or one boat in the ocean. But to take that and then take it to a race course or take it to a fleet where you can compare what you're doing with other people, there is so much to be gained from that too, because you need that comparison sometimes to see, oh, what would it have been like if I had gone there versus here? And there's a huge learning there as well. I think they both are important for different reasons, but definitely the sort of fleet type sailing is valuable.
I have to read you, this is a public review from Christine and Chip, who sailed with you on the race. They've sailed, I believe you sailed with them on one of our cruising trips as well. They've done a couple trips with us. But this was so cool. I'm just going to read this. This is written by Christine and Chip. She said, the race was nothing sort of transformative. Writing a testimonial for something so experiential does not do justice to the extraordinary program Nikki and Alex have so expertly put together. If you're looking for something that tests the fiber of your being, all while being part of something so much bigger than yourself. This is for you. Be prepared to laugh, cry, hurt, make new friends, experience exhaustion, and feel bliss as you cultivate a deep sense of accomplishment. This is sailing at its best with the best. It doesn't get better. Thank you, 59 North, and congratulations to a superlative skipper and her first mate for dedicating themselves to their crew and the sport they are so clearly passionate about.
Aww,
how does that make you feel?
It gives me a lump in my throat, actually. It gives me a lump in my throat because I know the journey that they went on. And you do really get this very, very special insight into people and their life and where they are at that time, and you get to watch them grow and blossom, and it was fun to watch Chris and Chip go through that, as it was with everyone. And yeah, it's very touching.
Are you excited? Are we going to keep this going? We already have races on the schedule for next year, but how do you feel about this now? This was kind of a test year. Now both races from this year are in the bag. How do you feel going forward?
Yeah, I feel excited. And I think it's been fun also to see Alex grow too. And I think he's loving it. And it's really nice that with 59 North, we get to do this and then sail on Falcon or Eastbeyond. And we kind of get to fill both buckets because they give you different things. So yeah, we are definitely carrying on. We're doing the 600, which I think is full in February. And then I think there's a few places left on the Middle Sea race in October. And then, yeah, I need to sit down with everyone and chat about how we'll expand it. I think I'm starting to realize that there's going to be a bit of there's not that many spaces and a lot of the crew are wanting to come back for more. So we're going to have to figure that one out. But yeah, really
cool.
Excited about the future.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I can't wait to see you. I don't know when I'm going to see you again, but it's always nice chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to listening to your episode today.
Thanks, Andy. So good to see you too.
Cool. Talk later.
Bye.
On the Wind is presented by our good friends Forbes Yachts. Go to FORBES, ForbesYachts.com to check out the listings that he has and to get in touch to buy or sell your dream boat. Fun connection. I'm recording this ad from my friend Adam's Beneteau 373, which he bought through Forbes. And actually, Adam is the reason that we know Forbes. Way back in the day, this must be like 2006 or 7, Forbes was working for another brokerage in Annapolis that my dad had used for many years buying and selling his boats. And this guy, my friend Adam, who I've grown up with, he's a lifelong friend of mine. We've known each other literally our whole lives. We got in touch and said, hey, Adam wants to buy a boat. Back then, he was looking at cheaper boats. And this other broker said, hey, talk to my sort of colleague Forbes here, who just started working for us. And that's how we got in touch with Forbes. Forbes helped Adam buy his first boat, which was a Tartan 37 Classic. And now here we are, probably almost 20 years later, and Forbes just helped Adam buy his current family boat. He's got 2 kids now, and I'm helping him take it down the ICW. So Forbes has become not just a sponsor of the show, but a good friend of ours, and it's always fun to see him. In fact, I'm sitting on the boat in Jabin's right in front of Forbes' office, so I hope to get to see him this weekend. But if you're trying to buy or sell your dream boat, please get in touch with Forbes. He's the real deal. He's a real sailor himself, and he's no bullshit yacht broker, which is a rare thing. So check out ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. And thanks again to Forbes for sponsoring the show. On the Wind is also presented by SailTies. SailTies is a free app that makes it easy to record all of your sailing experience in one place. A digital record of all your voyages, certificates, crew, vessels, and clubs. No more adding up miles in a paper book that can be easily lost. With just 2 taps, SailTies generates a beautiful memory of each trip that is fun to share with family and friends. We've partnered with SailTies, and they have ingested all of the data from the history of 59 North. That's over 130,000 miles that we've sailed, and now have put them up as SailTies trips. I am about to send all that out to our crew that have sailed with us, and they'll be able to claim those voyages and add it to the 59 North group that we've created. I am personally really excited about this app. I put these guys off for 2 years. They've been trying to get in touch with me to help them grow it. I finally had a call with them. Chris and Tom, the founders, are awesome people. I love the concept, and now I'm trying to help it get better. And it's been really fun partnering with them. So you should check this out. SailTies is free to use with an optional SailTies Plus subscription to unlock even more from your voyages, including automatic historic weather data and grouping voyages into collections. There's going to be a lot more to come between 59 North and Sail Ties, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, download the app, check it out. And if you are a crew member with 59 North, past, present, or future, stay tuned. You'll hear from me shortly to get all those past claimed voyages up there. Go to sailties.net, that's SAILTIES.net, or download it in the Android or iOS app stores.
You're listening to On the Wind, the podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Nikki Henderson. In January 2024, Dr. Deborah Fish became the first woman ever to be elected Commodore of the Royal Ocean Racing Club. For 99 years, RORC, as it's better known, has been regarded as the premier organiser of offshore racing globally, as well as a leading authority for safety at sea. Its most famous event you might have heard of, the Fastnet Race. Deb has completed that one an impressive 11 times. Despite only starting sailing in her 30s, Deb has an incredible sailing resume and now heads up one of the most influential organisations in offshore sailing worldwide. So not only is she promoting, but also living the truth, that offshore sailing truly is a sport for anyone, provided they are up for the challenge. Well, good afternoon, Deb.
Good afternoon, Nikki.
So where are we right now?
We're in Loxheath, just north of Hamble and Warsash.
And we're in your house. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having us. Deb, so we met a few weeks ago in Cowes at a fundraising dinner for the Magenta Project, which is a charity that is working towards making sailing more inclusive. You spoke there. That was the first time we met, but I met you when you were on stage actually at the Caribbean 600 prize giving back in February. And that's because you, in January, were elected as Commodore of RORC. And I think I'm going to hand over to you now to explain what on earth do we mean by RORC and how do you become the Commodore?
Okay, so RORC is the Royal Ocean Racing Club. It's an offshore sailing club based in the UK with clubhouses in London and Cowes. It was established in 1925 because we'll have our centenary next year. And broadly, it started when a small group of people decided that it would be a jolly good idea to have a yacht race around the Fastnet Rock and finish in Plymouth. And from that, a club was born, and things have happened since then.
Oh, so it was created with the first Fastnet race?
I think so, yes. Broadly, about the same time, anyway, yes.
And what do they do now?
So what do RORC do now? RORC is known for running the Fastnet Race, which is the largest offshore race in the world. It's notorious because there was a disaster in 1979. So it's a challenging race. 600 or 700 miles offshore, goes out into the Celtic Sea, round the iconic Fastnet Rock and comes back. So we run that, the biggest offshore race in the world, sponsored by Rolex. We run a whole series of offshore races, predominantly in the English Channel, but it's very much an international series. So this year we've had a transatlantic, we've had a Caribbean race, the Caribbean 600, which is a fantastic race. We've had the Baltic Sea race in the Baltic. We've included other races like Round Ireland. So it's a full series. It's quite tough going, and all good fun.
So the club basically organises events. That's its main purpose.
Yeah, its purpose is to... Oh, you got me there, but it's to essentially further the advancement of offshore racing, the design of seaworthy yachts for offshore racing, and it does that through... it has a couple of clubhouses which are available to members to socialise and to talk racing with other people, which is good, and it organises the racing. So broadly speaking, racing... clubhouses in London and Cowes, and a very international club. So not only does it run races around the world, it also has a very international membership. So I think about 2/3 are from the UK and about 1/3 are from overseas, which makes it quite a special club, I think.
And there's thousands of members, is there?
About 4,000 members, yeah.
Wow, so you are heading up one of the most international yachting organisations in the world, I guess. You have your foot in lots of different areas of the world just because of the races the club is running.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt it's an influential club around the world, particularly where offshore racing is concerned. I mean, there are lots of other fantastic clubs around the world who run offshore races, many of whom we partner with, the New York Yacht Club, various others. So yes, it's an influential club, and yes, I suppose I'm the volunteer figurehead, in that we have a group of flag officers, which the Commodore, I suppose, is the lead. But we also have a staff headed by a chief executive who run it. So we have a professional team who organise the races, who run the clubhouses and so on. So I'm not running any of that. We're just providing the strategic direction, and then we have a team of people who do that for us.
So I did some research, and clearly you were elected to be the Commodore.
Yes.
So should I say congratulations?
Congratulations or commiserations. Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah. You've decided to do a full-time job on the side of your full-time job.
Yes, pretty much. In fact, I think I've probably got 3 full-time jobs, really. So I have a work job. We do a lot of sailing. So we race a 36-foot yacht double-handed, myself and my sailing partner, Rob. And we do a lot of racing each year. So we probably race 3 weekends out of 4 in the summer. And I think I've done 3 600-mile races this year. And on top of that, I have some RORC duties. So, I'm pretty busy.
So you're like a professional sailor, a professional... real-time worker, and then you're running the club. Wow. And you were elected, and I don't think I can brush over the fact that you are the first woman to do the job. Do you like that label, or would you prefer it to just be you're the Commodore and not make that less relevant?
I see it both ways, to be honest. I look forward to a day when it doesn't matter, and we're certainly making progress in that direction, which is great through initiatives like the Magenta Project. I suppose that the nice thing about some of the publicity is when I've done things like this in the past, perhaps in my career, so I was the first female lecturer when I was a lecturer in university. What I've observed is that it seems to help other people go, well, I could do that too. And before you know it, there's 3 or 4 of you. So I quite like that idea that where someone goes first, others will follow, and then you open up, opportunities for other people, which is great. But yes, I'd rather just be, on the water and off the water. I'm just a sailor like anybody else.
Agreed. It's like the ripple effect is worth it, but it's perhaps you don't feel it's relevant necessarily for you.
No, I want to go sailing. I want to go sailing on equal terms against men and women, and I want to get involved with running a club on equal terms with men and women. And it doesn't really matter. And yes, like any other organisation, we try within RORC to have a diverse main committee, but that's so it reflects its members' interest. We all know the literature which shows that diverse organisations are better performing organisations, and it's no great surprise, if they better represent the full breadth of their the pool of people that they're drawing members from. In our case, the pool of people racing with us, and they range from really both ends of the age spectrum, from really quite young to really quite later on in life, successfully at both ends, I might add. So you want to represent that full community, and you want to have role models there, on your website, winning races, etc., that fully represent our society, so that everyone goes, I could do that, I would feel at home there. And I think you will be.
Yeah, I've just fully agree with that. And I loved the comment, all ages and the success in all ages. I think that's something that's like very unique for sailing, is that you see people on the podium who are like pensioners and also who are, barely out of high school.
Yep. Guess how old the person who is leading our miles leaderboard is this year? So the most miles, and we have things like a transatlantic race, lots of 600-mile races, so I think they've done over 4,000 miles so far. Guess how old they are?
Well, my instinct would be that they've probably got a lot of free time on their hands.
Yeah.
So on the extreme ends, I would guess. How old are they?
I think they're 70.
Wow, good for them. So you're never too old to begin.
Never too old to begin. Yes.
So Deb, how did you get into sailing?
Oh, there's a question. In an unconventional way, I guess. So I didn't start sailing until I was about 30. So I was working in Reading University's meteorology department at the time. And at the time I was into outdoor stuff like rock climbing and mountaineering. And I found out that they ran a weather and sailing field trip. So I thought, I need to get myself on that. So the first year I went as a member of staff, sort of a lecturer, kind of teaching the meteorology part of it, and did 4 days. And the second year I did 8 days. And then one of the owners said, do you want to come with us on a cruise to France in the summer? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And we ended up bringing this boat back with just 2 of us. And Arthur was telling me, this is what the lights of ships look like. So you can be on your own in the dark in the middle of the night. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And from that, I signed up for my day skipper course and kind of, learnt some of the theory and then got into it from there really. But it's just chance. But later in life, and I guess that's why I'm passionate about trying to create routes into sailing for everyone. If you're lucky enough to sail as a kid and get into dinghies, then you can come from dinghies into offshore racing. If you're not lucky enough, if you get into it via, like I did, a bit of a strange route, or either clipper or whatever, you're never too old. So yeah, it needs to be all sorts of routes in.
I really like. We actually already spoke about that, but I feel, I'm passionate about the fact that you don't have to have this like very cute photo of you in a life jacket when you're 2 years old sailing to be a sailor, which I think there is that stigma attached to sailing. I'm not sure why that is. It's like,
I think with any sport, if you learn to a reasonable standard when you're young, you'll probably get better than if you start later in life. I don't have that dinghy sailing feel that someone who started sailing as a kid has. But the lovely thing about sailing is it's so multidimensional. There's a physical aspect, but certainly offshore, I think we've shown that men and women can compete on equal terms because there's so much that makes up for it. So you've got a mental aspect, you've got an analysis aspect, you've got a gut feel. There are so many dimensions to it. You can try and make up in one area where you're not so good in another. And then of course you can team up in a full crew or double-handed team and build the team that way.
So seeing as you solo sail or double handing, or you double hand, which is sort of like solo sailing, but you have a sleep as well. So you do all of those things.
Yeah.
Do you think would you say that there's one thing that's more important than the rest when it comes to skills?
So across the full range of sailing, from solo to double-handed to fully crewed, are you saying there's one thing that's more important? Yeah,
like physical ability, mental game, weather analysis, routing, just putting the right sails up,
No, I don't think there's only one thing. If I had to pull out the one thing that you want in every offshore crew, it's the right attitude. It's that, you want someone who, when you get them up out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "Quick, we've got to get the spinnaker down. It's blowing old boots," they go, "All right, I'm coming," as opposed to, "Go away, I'm in my bed." So it's that's the first thing you want in any offshore sailor. They've got to be up for it and cheerful, with a bucket of water in the face and on a bucking foredeck and when woke up in the middle of the night.
So basically, you got to like punishment.
I prefer to think about it as kind of variability. You get some wonderful highs and lows in offshore racing, and you can't have the fantastic highs without a few lows because it's a very variable sport.
I totally agree. I actually had a mentor of mine right at the beginning of sailing and of my sailing career. And I think it's fair to say I wasn't that good at sailing. But she said, you've got the right attitude and you can learn the skills. And because of that, you can keep going. And I think it's so true. It's such a mental sport.
Oh, it is, yeah. it is a mental sport because the endurance is quite extreme. I mean, I suppose the most extreme thing I've done is a solo race run by the UK Solo Offshore Racing Club, which we called it Solo Round the Rock, but it did the course of the original Fastnet Race. And that was 5 days non-stop in some quite congested waters. So you're starting in the Solent, you're going all the way down the Channel, across the Celtic Sea, around the Rock, and then back across the Celtic Sea and then into Plymouth. So, you've got quite a lot of shipping lanes, some very busy waters, and for me, it took me and my 32-foot boat, I think it was 5 days and 1 hour. So, it's a long...
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's a long time, yeah. So, you've got to manage, and you've got to manage your sleep, you've got to manage your boat, you've got to manage the risk, you've got to manage the weather. If I remember rightly, on the day we started, it was a really windy round the island race, and about a quarter of the boats didn't even get around the island. And there we were solo setting off, around the Fastnet race course. So, yeah, you've got to have a lot of drive and determination, otherwise you just give up before you started.
Drive and determination, but I think what you said before, like the ability to find something positive in something really difficult or challenging. Like you've got to be able to pull out something good, even when to sort of the average person, it feels awful.
Yes. Yeah, and that can be, just the beauty of the weather. One of the things you sometimes find is you're sailing along and you're at your lowest ebb. It's like 4 a.m, the sun hasn't come up, and you're just feeling a bit grumpy. And then all of a sudden you see, some dolphins come by, and it just brings a big smile to your face. So being in the outdoors, you get some beautiful sights. You just have to know that, however rough it is now, it will get better. And often the roughest times are followed by, the most beautiful sunrises or the most beautiful bit of scenery or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of knowledge, when you go to the bar after a race or after, or you end up in some like nautical venue in the middle, somewhere in the world, in some port.
Usually a bar.
Yeah. There's sort of like this look around the room like, yeah, I know that that we've all been through something difficult and that we enjoyed it.
Yeah. And there is nothing like that. I mean, part of offshore sailing is the sailing itself, but part of it's the camaraderie afterwards. And, the best races have that camaraderie. So you have a crowded beer tent and it's full of people. And, like last year's Fastnet Yacht Race was a really good example. It was rough. The first 24 hours were really rough. We were going upwind in winds gusting up to 40 knots. Several boats dismasted, one boat sank, same type as ours actually. There was maydays, non-stop on the radio, and it was properly horrible. And then the next day it was lovely, and then we had I think about 3 or 4 weather systems in the whole race, and everyone who got to Cherbourg had a massive sense of achievement, and they were just buzzing in the race tent because it had been hard, because not everyone did it, and because they did it, and the sense of satisfaction was immense, and that shared satisfaction, that's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah. Do you think that that's what pulled you into sailing? Because you got in at 30 years old. I mean, what were you looking for, do you think? Or what did it bring to you?
It bring to me? It brought to me a challenge, really, was the big thing it brought to me. Challenge being physical challenge, mental challenge, and the satisfaction of always having new things to learn. And that's what I loved about it. And then you complete my first Fastnet, and that feeling of satisfaction was there and was fantastic.
So talking of big highs and lows, any good stories?
Ooh, yeah, I've got a few stories. Probably the most outlandish one was when we hit a whale. So we were coming back across the Atlantic. The boat had done, I think it was the Ark, and we were racing another kind of older Volvo 60 back, just informally, just to make the delivery more fun. And about 1,000 miles from the west coast of Ireland, we hit a whale in the middle of the night. Or we think it was a whale because the boat, the 60-foot boat, pretty much came to a stop, but it was a rounded impact, not a sharp corner, which was lucky. And essentially the section just after the bow was really caved in and the stringer was kind of quite deformed. So essentially we kind of stopped and shored it up and cautiously made our way home. So that was
Wow, so you were mid-ocean and the boat stopped?
The boat stopped, yeah.
But was there water ingress?
There wasn't water ingress, luckily. No, I guess these boats are built quite strongly. Essentially, the bow kind of deformed, the stringer deformed, and we, I had some very experienced people skippering it. They just kind of, got some stuff like fenders and stuff and really shored it up, and then we kind of gingerly kind of started off, and then we gained confidence, and then we kind of put a bit more sail up because it had still a long way to go.
So when that happened, like, do you remember what went through your head, and how everyone reacted?
It's a little while ago now. I don't remember being too worried because the people I was with, Derek and Mark, they were very capable. They seemed completely in control of things. They basically skippered it effectively, worked out what to do, did it, and got on with it. They didn't panic, so we didn't panic.
You must have thought, if we missed an island or a large rock in the water that we didn't realise was there.
I was probably navigating, so I probably knew that wasn't the case. But
yeah, I do remember actually. It's so easy to criticise other sailors for there are several boats that have hit like large islands in the middle of the ocean, and we've all said, "Oh, they shouldn't have done that." But I certainly have been mid-ocean and remembered in time to zoom in and see, there's Ascension Island in the middle of the Atlantic, or these. Yeah, it's bizarre that these places exist.
It is, but it's very easy to come a cropper. I mean, the last time I nearly came a cropper like that, we'd just. It was the first time I did round Britain, actually, and I was navigating, and we'd got almost all the way around. So we'd gone clockwise from Cowes, and we were just off Selsey Bill, so we can't have been more than 50 miles from the finish of a 1,800-mile race. And we had to go outside Owers, the buoy, won't mean anything to people from abroad, but we jibed in, and there's a massive shallow area, Selsey Bill, and we were sailing along to it, and as far as I was concerned, we passed it. We'd gone past the buoy, which marked the southern extent by a long way. But because we jibed in, and the skipper said, "Well, what's that breaking water?" It's like, "Oh, it's Owers. Let's jibe now, shall we?" So yes, nearly. I think we wanted to win that race, but very nearly, very badly messed up.
I know that feeling. You think, that was a little message from the universe, like, stop being complacent.
Yes, I mean we were very tired. I think we were on some crazy watch system with a lot of hours on and not many hours off. We were literally falling asleep on our feet. But yeah.
So are you? You said you were a lecturer, first female lecturer. Is that in meteorology?
Yes, I can explain that in two ways. So I'm not a meteorologist. I have no qualifications in meteorology. However, my PhD was on the ozone hole. I'm a chemist by training, so I was, I suppose, an atmospheric scientist, but specialising in chemistry, but with a slightly broader knowledge of that. And the meteorology department essentially wanted a chemist/physicist, and so I was kind of a bit of an interloper in the meteorology department, surrounded by meteorologists. So I probably know more about meteorology than most amateurs, but I am not a meteorologist.
So I always, some sort of like a handicap I've always felt in sailing is, on a personal level, is that I'm not a very detail-orientated person. I prefer big picture,
right?
Strategic planning.
Yeah.
I can think on my feet, but like the playing the rating system if you're racing, or getting that extra 0.1 of a knot. I tend to lean on the that's why I like offshore racing, because it's a bit more strategic. You are like one of so many of my friends who have engineering mindsets, who kind of perhaps like detail. Do you think that sailing serves both kinds? Do you feel like you have a different type of power in sailing because of your detail orientated mind?
Sailing, I think, is I tend to say uniquely challenging sport, but I guess there are probably other challenging sports out there that I don't play. But
I don't know.
It is very challenging, isn't it? Because certainly if you sail short-handed like I tend to do at the moment, you've got to have that big picture and be able to say, okay, there's 5 things wanting my attention. I'm going to prioritise this one. So you've got to have that. But equally, it does reward the attention to detail. I mean, the last offshore we did, the last long offshore, the Dream Cup, there were some really quite challenging conditions in the middle. And essentially we just had to really keep the boat going in next to no wind, because if we could get out the other side, we'd escape and do really quite well. But if the whole fleet was compressing behind us, and if we let them catch us, we were, our big advantages disappeared. And I've never worked so hard. I think for 2 hours I was just tweaking everything, every few seconds, just like the wind's up half a knot. Okay, let's just pop a little bit more trim on and do this and do that. And so, it can pay that. And that's lovely. But you just got to not lose perspective. It's very easy to go, all right, I want this extra fraction of a knot. And then you spend like 20 minutes changing a head sail, during which point the wind's changed by 60 degrees and you are merrily going in the wrong direction. So it kind of needs both.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's very multifaceted. If I think about that, yeah, I know that total mindset of like you're trying to eke out, you're being so careful, you're so kind of laser focused, while you still have to have that like almost bird's eye view of what the fleet's doing, what the weather systems are doing, like kind of strategic planning on how tired you're going to be. I mean, so many different avenues of thought going on simultaneously.
Yeah. And crucially, you've also got to be very careful about safety. I mean, one of the races, in fact, the only race that Rob and I together have ever won was this year. And about five, so that was the Edstone Lighthouse and back. But about 5 yachts went onto the Shingles Bank. Now, it's probably luck that we didn't get there, but whilst thinking about getting every a half a knot or 0.1 of a knot of speed out the boat and what sails to have up, etc. You've also got to think, well, what if the wind did drop when I was up tide of that bank, because the tide is strong and it is sluicing me on it. And it's very easy to get drawn into things and to think in the now, I've got a bit of wind, I can steer, I've not got a problem, and not think, but if.
Yeah, don't get greedy.
Just always think about safety, don't get greedy. I mean, the other thing with don't get greedy is you've got to, when you're short tacking down a rocky shore against the tide, last time we were doing that on Round Britain, we're being quite cautious. I'm quite a cautious navigator. And there was a boat, basically tacking in while we're tacking out. And, Rob's like, well, we need to get further inshore. We're losing. I was like, no, I want to, our 2-week race, I don't want it to be over on day one. And one of the boats inshore hit the rocks and their race was over. So, you've always...
Of course, they might get lucky sometimes. But
it's always a balance, isn't it? And on the other hand, if you don't push, you won't win. So it's a balance, and it's not just a balance in terms of just like, where do I hit the shuttlecock in badminton? If you get it wrong, ultimately you could put your life at risk, or you could certainly put, £10,000-20,000 worth of damage to the boat.
I think this is really good stuff, because I think there are a lot of couples who think about going sailing, maybe cruising, maybe racing. And I think that often one of them has, maybe a real fascination in boats or engineering or the sails or the construction. And the other half of the partnership can often feel like there's no place for them. But there's so much other stuff that goes on here to make a successful boat and team. Yeah,
there is. And it's even the little things, isn't it? Like being the cheerful one, or like going, this person's on the helm and actually they've got the skills to do it, but if I don't give them some cup of tea and a Mars bar, they're going to fall off a cliff, and before you know it, will crash. So there is everything from mechanically fixing it to navigating to the grunt work of pulling a sail up at the mast. There's a bit of everything. And I think that the big message in particular for short-handed crews, and one of the reasons I did the first course I did, I'd been in France, on my sort of, my very first cross-channel trip, this cruise, and I saw so many boats coming in, and the presumably stronger middle-aged man in the couple was steering the boat in, shouting at his wife, who probably wasn't into sailing quite as much, to jump off and tie this off and tie that off and tie that off. And you just think to yourself, wouldn't it make sense if you were the one doing the jumping off and you taught your partner how to do it? Now, you can do it either way, but you really do need to think about how you empower every member of your crew, whether it be, just yourself, your double-handed partner, or your big fully crew, because you're going to get the best out of the boat is if you get the best out of every member of your crew, and they are motivated and they all want the boat to do the best it can for their team.
And then you have fun. Everyone has more fun.
And then you have fun, yeah.
Which is, I guess, why we're ultimately doing it.
Yes. Sometimes you do wonder, and that's why I never criticise anyone who retires from a yacht race or decides not for them, because if you're not having fun, if it's not the conditions in which you're going to enjoy it, if you don't think you've got the skills, then it's absolutely fine, because that's the reason we're going, is to have fun.
Yeah, and I think that's like, another part of the decision making in sailing is also knowing when those little hairs on the back of your neck are lifting and you're just not feeling it. Yeah. And it's okay if you're not feeling it to not go, even if everything looks fine, totally. Even if everyone else is going.
Yeah. Sometimes your head's not in the right place, and you just have to accept it. I mean, I pulled out of a solo race once because my head just wasn't in the right place. You just have to accept it.
So if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, this racing thing sounds interesting, or maybe short-handed sailing, what would you say to them?
Oh, well, it depends where you are, really. I mean, the first thing you have to do is find the opportunity to go sailing, and that can either be through a crew match. It depends how much experience you got. I got into it through pay-to-play sailing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Why not share the burden? Boats is expensive. There's no harm in sharing the burden. So, first of all, you've got to get yourself on a boat, but then I think be willing, be cheerful, and try and have a go at everything. Don't just get pigeonholed too early, and be the person who does the pit or whatever. You can do that, but see if you can get a chance to do the other things, learn the other jobs, even if it's on a delivery back from a race, we might race in the UK, we race to France quite a lot, and often we cruise back. That's your time when all your inexperienced crew should be having to go at the helm, having to go at the jobs they don't do. When you get the chance, not when it's stressful in the middle of the race, but, when you get the chance and people don't mind, ask questions and learn as much as you can, have a go.
Yeah, I also actually got into racing through deliveries. Not being a delivery skipper, but I ended up getting on so many. That was the easiest way to go sailing, wasn't it? And often for free, because people are looking for crew just to jump on and help them take their boats back, and you get to sail really technical, fast boats, and have a go.
Yeah, and another nice thing about delivery is they're often done quite short crewed. So it's not a question, I mean, you don't have to sit on the rail because that's not needed, but you have to do things because there's often very few of you. Whereas when you've got, if you've got a fully crewed race yacht, you may be the person who just sits on the rail if you're the least experienced. So yeah, it's a great way to get some miles, to get some experience in those low pressure conditions. Yeah, and it's easy when you get on a boat. Yeah,
and you build respect too, because no one wants to do the delivery. So often you get invited to do the races after that.
Absolutely, and people want the crew who are prepared to pitch in. They don't want the crew who just rocks up 5 minutes before you leave the dock. having left somebody else to prepare the boat, who won't help with the fixing things when they go wrong, and who won't deliver the boat when it needs to go back. And it's all a bit of a balance, isn't it? I mean, pragmatically, you have to accept that we all have lives outside of it. We all have times when we can't do it, but you just have to make sure that times when you do step in, so with Rob and I, the sailing we do, sometimes I've got time to do something on the boat and I live nearer, and sometimes he has, and it balances out, so it works.
So, you probably remember the first time you went racing. Do you remember?
Ooh. Not specifically. I guess I remember the season, but not the individual race.
As an early racer, let's say, or especially offshore racing, would you have done anything differently? Could you give yourself some advice, like, you definitely shouldn't have taken that, or turned up with that piece of equipment, or don't stand there?
I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot of it in terms of things like be cheerful, be willing to help out with everything, and when you get the chance, be curious and try and learn as much as you can. But I guess the other one I would say is be aware. It's very easy when you're new to get tunnel vision. So if your job is to, pull the guy on in a jibe or something, and that's your job, you can tunnel down to it, and then before you know it, you're pulling that rope because you think that's what you've got to do, and you haven't looked up to see that the foredeck person is struggling to get in the end of the pole still, and they're not ready. So having that wider awareness and just relaxing a little bit and looking at what's going on is something I think that's important as well. I
mean, Debs, you've got some amazing insights. I think that people... there goes my teeth. I just dropped my new braces on the floor. Debs, you've given us some great insights, and I think that anyone who's interested in sailing in general, I think is going to learn a lot from this. And I do hope that people who are listening know that this isn't really racing specific. This is really sailing. Racing is just like sailing with some precision, I would say.
Intense sailing.
Yeah, intense. I like it, yes. What are you looking forward to in the future with your sailing?
Ooh, good question. Well, the plans I have immediately are to go and do the Caribbean 600 next year. So we're looking forward to that immensely in terms of big plans. There are lots of races I still haven't done. I'd like to go and do some of the French races, like the Giro Catamania. Lots of races I'd like to do again. Love to do the race to Alaska sometime. That just sounds mad. And that's a bit like, a little bit reminiscent of things like the Three Peaks race. They're just a bit more adventure races and they have a proper degree of adventure in them. So what we tend to do with the RORC series is it's a little bit more performance racing rather than, out and out crazy mad adventure racing. So a little bit more of that would be good.
So for anyone who doesn't know what the Three Peaks yacht race, it's a bit like the race to Alaska in that it's sort of human powered, but it also involves running up mountains. And seeing as you're so interested in these races, Debs, and you're the Commodore of RORC, what do you reckon? Would RORC ever get involved in something like that?
Now there's a question. I think for RORC it would be a little bit difficult because it's a race that we have got some pretty large boats in our fleet. It's kind of some of the it's the place for the Grand Prix yachts to race, as well as the place for the family cruisers. So we try and cover the whole spectrum, but we try and have races that everyone can do, even if they've got like a 4-meter draft or they're 60 foot long or even longer. And the Three Peaks isn't really open to particularly big yachts because it's got draft restrictions. I mean, it takes you through the Menai Straits, which is between North Wales and Anglesey. And, that's a place I go kayaking because it's like whitewater kayaking. You go there on a whitewater kayaking course. It's rock strewn, it's narrow. You're literally just tacking or jibing because the wind always blows along it. It funnels. So you're, and you've got bridges in the way and massive tides. So, and I think that aspect of it sounds a little bit similar, probably on a smaller, more tempered scale than the race to Alaska.
It is similar, yes.
Yeah.
Similar to the Seymour Narrows type section, yeah.
Yeah, and you also get to row when the wind's light, which is horrible. But I mean, so I can't see it working for RORC, but there's nothing wrong with an adventure race, and the lovely thing about RORC is it does have an international program. It includes the Middle Sea race, the Baltic Sea race, the Caribbean, transatlantic. So there's around Ireland, and there's some very challenging races, but they're all challenging. Almost every 600 mile is challenging in a different way.
Yeah, that's the beauty of them. They're like the perfect length. They're just about accessible for people, even if they're not seriously extreme sailors. But they're also challenging enough. They are adventurous, for sure.
Yeah, and everyone's different. The weather's different. I mean, the weather in the Mediterranean is completely different to here, completely different to Sydney. Everyone's got a different character, and they're all lovely in their own way.
Do you have a favourite?
Oh, they're all my favourite for different reasons. So the Caribbean 600 is the most fun. It's just wonderful with sunshine, trade winds, and beautiful, beautiful islands. The Middle Sea is the most beautiful. The Fastnet's the most competitive. It's the classic. It's the big one. But Round Island I love because Round Island is just so tactical, which for a navigator like me is fascinating because there are so many opportunities to gain and lose. It's just fascinating.
So to close, Debs, I'm interested. Would you ever go cruising?
Yes, we do occasionally go cruising. Nothing wrong with a bit of cruising. And if in COVID when we couldn't race, we did do a little bit of cruising just to get out. But really, we're kind of racing in a lower gear if we go cruising, to be honest.
I know the feeling. You're a twitchy sailor.
Yeah, I can't not trim, basically. But no, I have been cruising. I've been cruising. Nice to get something like the Scillies, or went solo cruising once with a friend. That was fun. We both took our boats and sailed together and enjoyed it, and then met up in the bars afterwards. But
that's a good idea.
Yeah, it was good fun because we each got to practice on our boats and play with someone else there to measure ourselves against, but some good company when you got to the other end, so it was good.
Well, Debs, thank you very much, and we will for sure see you at the end of one of the big 600 races, but we'll follow your kind of 3-year stint. I think it's 3 years.
Yes.
And look forward to seeing how, I guess, the ripple effect that your presence makes, which I'm sure it will do.
Fingers crossed. Sailing is a sport for everyone. Come and try it.
Thanks, Debs.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks for listening to On the Wind. Thanks again to our sponsors, Forbes Yachts and Sail Ties. Check out Forbes Yachts at FORBES, ForbesYachts.com, and download the Sail Ties app in either the iOS or Android app stores. Until next time, hold fast. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 Degrees North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by August Sandberg, Emma Garshagen, and occasionally Ben Doer. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest and musician Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends, the Stormweather Shanty Choir. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, "Come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time." But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said, "Last time you was paid up with me, you talked up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. with a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any horse. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.